Christy. So excited to be back with you on the Lawnfawn YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be making a holiday card using sweet Christmas mice, a creature was stirring, treat cart, and Christmas dreams. So let's get started. I've stamped those images in Lawnfawn jet black ink, and I will be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm starting with my mice, and I'm going with my favorite combo for mice, which is W00, E70, E71, and E74. It has this really beautiful grayish tone to it that I just think makes the mice look so cute. And I am starting with that E74 and laying in my shadows on each of these little guys, just placing those toward the back of their bodies so that their faces will stay nice and highlighted so we can really make out all of their adorable features. And since these guys are pretty small and I stamped them close together, I'm just going to go through one marker at a time. That way I don't have to switch back and forth. Once I have all of my shadows laid in with that E74, I'm going to come in with the E71 and start to pull that out. I'm only using the darkest three shades for most of their bodies. I did leave a little bit of room on the front of their face that I left white, and then I mainly use the W00 for the bellies on the ones that are showing. So once I have that E71 all blended out with that E74, I'm going to come in with the next shade, which is going to be the E70. And if you're looking for more ways to color mice, I do have a video on my channel of 8 ways to color the lawnfawn mice, so definitely check that out. It uses some different combos and also some different patterns and textures to their fur to make them look extra cute. I love all the lawnfawn critters, but I especially love the little mice, and I think it's so great how many different sets they appear in so that we're able to mix and match and really pull together some fun and interesting cards, creating some different unique scenes, all featuring the sweet little mice. Then I wanted to give my mice some rosy cheeks and also color in their noses and the insides of their ears and their little feet. And I decided to try out a different combo today. I'm using R30, R32, and R35. Started with the R35 on that cheek area, blended out with the R32. I also colored in their noses with the R32 and added a little bit of that to the ear. Then I blended that out with the E30 and used the E30 alone to color in their little feet to make them look nice and pink. I'm going to keep that R35 and add in R37 and R39. So this red combo is going to tie together nicely with the pinks that I used on the cheeks. And my darkest shade for the cheek area is now going to become my lightest shade in this combo. And I'm going to color in anything that I want to look red. So I'm going to do the 2 stockings and the big swoopy bow. I'm going to do every other stripe on my candy canes. And I'm just starting with that R39, blending out with the R37, and then I'll fill in with the R35. I really like this red combo. It has just a little bit of a blue undertone to it, so it's more on the cool side of the red family. It kind of reminds me of cranberries, which I just thought would go well with the color palette that I wanted to work with today. So I did squeeze all 3 shades onto the stockings and the bow. I only used the darkest 2 shades on every other stripe on the candy cane since it was such a small area. I am going to squeeze all 3 shades onto my little holly berries, and then I'm also going to do every 3rd little gumdrop below the gingerbread house. I only did 2 to start off with, but I ended up doing the last one in the row as well later on. So I'm just going to finish off anything that I want to be red in this little scene, and then we'll move on to a dusty pink. The next combo is going to be R81, R83, and R85. I'm going to do the next two gumdrops next to the red ones on my gingerbread house. And I'm also going to do the framework of my treat cart. Since this is a holiday card, I was imagining that the little mouse with the apron and the little mouse with the chef's hat are running a gingerbread cart. And so everything that they sell on this little cart is gingerbread flavored. So we've obviously got the gingerbread house and the gingerbread men and that adorable gingerbread mouse, which is one of my favorite holiday images from Lawn Fawn. I just think he's so, so cute. And then we've also got the cake, which I'm imagining is gingerbread flavored, and also the little cupcake. And then I wanted to bring in those dusty pinks because they reminded me of sugar plums, which I just thought went really well with the scene. So I colored in the heart on the stocking pink. I'm also going to do a sugar plum frosting on the little cupcake. And then I wanted to give the little girl mouse a pattern on her apron. So I decided to go with some polka dots, and I used the light and medium pink for those. So the R81 and the R83. And then for the string, I used R83 and R85. And then once again, I'm just going to step up this combo. I took away the R81 and added in the R89, and I'm going to do every other stripe on my awning. So I'm starting with that R89 and laying in some shadow there right up against the line, and then blending out with the R85, and then the R83 is going to be my highlight. I'm also going to do the cupcake liner and the little cake stand, which is going to serve as a table in my scene. But I found that this combo didn't provide quite enough contrast for me from the framework of the treat cart. So I am going to go back and do a second layer on all of the items that I colored with this combo off screen, just to beef up that saturation and make it a bit more vibrant. And I did also do the chimney on my gingerbread house. So next I'm going to work on my gingerbread, and there are different shades of gingerbread depending on whether or not you're using molasses or how much molasses. There's different recipes for gingerbread. I decided to go with a little bit of a lighter version, so I'm using E31, E33, and E35. So I'm starting with that E35 and laying in my shadows on anything that I want to be gingerbread flavored, except for the little cupcake since we can't actually see the cake part since we colored it as a liner. But I'm going to blend out that E35 with the E33, just working my way carefully around all of those little buttons on the gingerbread men and the gingerbread mouse and the icing on the cake. And then I'll come in with that lightest shade, the E31, and just fill in any remaining white space. And I did also do a second layer on this combo because I just wanted to smooth out that blend a little bit more. Then I'm going to bring in E50 and E51 so that we can have a little bit of maybe a vanilla flavored icing on the cake and the gingerbread house. I also use that for the white parts of the two little stockings that I'm going to use as decor. And I'm going to use that for the little chef's hat on my mouse. I thought that would be a nice combo for that. And I'm just leaving the white to be the highlight. I did also add just a touch of that E50 to the white parts of my candy canes. And then I'm going to bring in some warm grays for the rest of the stripes on my awnings. I'm using W1 and W00. I'm going to start with that W1. I'm also going to use it for my tires because I didn't want to bring in black in this scene. So I just decided to go with light gray tires so everything would match nicely. I blended out the W1 with the W00 and again left white as the highlight. And then my final combo is going to be green. I'm using G20, G24, and G28, and I will do my holly leaves and also the door on my gingerbread house, starting with the G28, laying in some shadow, blending out with the G24, and then bringing in that G20 for a nice little highlight. I really love this combo for the holidays especially. I also used that combo for any of the remaining buttons on my little gingerbread people, and then filled in the last two gumdrops on the gingerbread house. And then I'm just going to trim these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I'm starting with a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock, and I'm going to take the cloudy stencil and add some speckled egg distress oxide ink to create a nice sky. I went back and forth quite a bit on what shade to do the sky in. I didn't want it to be too blue since I didn't have any blue in my Copic coloring. So ultimately, I decided to go with speckled egg because it is such a subtle color. It's very desaturated. It has a lot of gray tone in it, which I thought would match with some of the warm grays that I used in the coloring. So I'm just turning that stencil and adding those cloud formations about halfway down the panel, and then adding a little extra ink to the bottom cloud so it doesn't look too stark white. Then I'll press some of that ink onto an acrylic block, add a little bit of water to it, and mix that up to make it more fluid. And then I'm just going to tap it all over the background with a thin paintbrush to get a nice splatter design. Then I'll set that aside to dry, and I'm going to bring in two more panels of Bristol. These I have trimmed down with the stitched hillside borders, and all I'm going to do is add a little bit of a frosty glow to the top, and I'm going to use the same color as I used for the clouds so that the snow can be reflecting the sky. So I've got a taller piece and a shorter piece, and then I am ready to assemble this background. I'm going to take the taller of the two snowdrifts and I'm going to glue that to my background piece using the glue tube. And I decided that I wanted it to be a little bit taller, so I just glued it a little bit higher up because a smaller panel will cover up that gap in the end. I'm going to pop that into my MISTI so I can start stamping my sentiment. I'm putting wishing you a on the taller part of the snowdrift, and then I'm going to add sweet Christmas to the lower part of the snowdrift. Then I'm also going to create an insert for the inside of my card. I'm using a darker colored cardstock for my card base. So I wanted to have a nice white backdrop to write my message on to the recipient. So I stamped the third little mouse from the Sweet Christmas Mice, and then the sentiment is from Christmas Dreams, and I stamped that in cranberry ink. I'm going to glue that to the inside of a lobster card base. I just scored and folded that to a standard A2 size card, so it's 4¼ wide by 5½ tall. And then I can add my background to the front of that. I'm just going to line that up straight with the edges of the card front. And then I will grab that extra little snowdrift and I'm going to glue that down at the bottom, just making sure that that is flush with the bottom two corners. Then I die cut the Scripty suite out of some more lobster cardstock, and I'm going to add a little bit of liquid glue to the back of that, and I'm going to add it in between the two rows of my stamped sentiment so that the entire phrase will say, wishing you a sweet, sweet Christmas. Then I also used the largest of the stitched scalloped rectangle frames to die cut more lobster cardstock, and I'm going to add that to the outer edges of my scene just to draw the eye a little bit more inward and pull the focus toward the center of the card. I can bring in my images and start to add those now. Starting with that treat card, I like to start with the largest image first. So I'm just going to get that placed, and I'm using the little mouse that I want to have beside it as a placeholder to make sure that I have it lined up just where I want it. Then I can glue that down, and I can also glue the little mouse holding the little spice cake right beside him on the right, coming down that little snowdrift. Inside the window of the treat cart, I'm going to have the gingerbread house on display. So I'll go ahead and add that. And then I'll grab the little cake stand that I want to use as a table. I'm going to place that down in front. I'm not going to glue it down yet because I want to make sure I have my mice all situated first. I'm going to take the one that's holding the gingerbread man and add that just above the sentiment. And then I'll have my little chef mouse off to the left. My girl mouse I'm going to place behind the table so she can be selling her wares. So I'll get her figured out, and then I can glue that little table down right in front of her. I'll take that big swoopy bow and I'm going to add that to the top of the treat cart so that we have some pretty decoration. And then I'm also going to add the two little stockings hanging from the center part right below that gingerbread house. And the way that the little girl mouse's hand is outstretched, it almost looks like she's decorating her little booth for the holidays. And then I was just figuring out where I wanted the rest of my elements. Originally, I was going to have the cupcake on the table, but it would have covered up too much of the little girl mouse. So I moved it up to the window with the gingerbread house. I'm going to add a little holly leaf and berry cluster to that table. And then I'll put the little gingerbread man and gingerbread mouse on the table as well. So the little girl mouse's apron got almost completely covered up, so I didn't need to do the pattern after all, but it was still fun to try. I'm going to add a candy cane in front of the gingerbread, and then also put the last candy cane in the chef mouse's hands. And then all that's left is to add some glitter to the scene. I'm going to take some Stardust stickles and add it to the icing on my gingerbread house and the cake, to my gumdrops, to the candy canes, the whites of the stockings and the little heart, and then all of the little buttons on the gingerbread men. And then as a last touch, I decided to also add some stickles to the lower part of my Scripty sweet. I just think that sets it off nicely. It almost looks like dried sugar once it's set. And that is going to finish off this card. So I'll lift that up so you can see some of that sparkle and give you another peek at the inside. I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. I had so much fun creating it. If you did, please give the video a like and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you guys so much for spending your time with me today. I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.